This is B2B Tech Talk, a podcast with Ingram Micro and Moxie Insights. I'm James Henderson, Editorial Director at Moxie Insights. In this episode, I'm joined by Sonia Phillips, emphasising the importance of experience in the Australian ecosystem.
Post-COVID, I think what we saw was a lot of the B2C experience roll into the B2B organisation and businesses. So now clients, when you're talking to them, they're looking for not only the best possible solution, but it's how they experience their engagement with you and your team. I think the more we think about data as this commodity that is flowing through the distribution network, the more we'll start to understand the opportunities we have to really differentiate that experience.
Sonia talks about how partners can accelerate market growth by simplifying processes, reducing complexity, and maximising data. Enjoy this episode. Okay, let's start with a problem statement. We've got low growth, volatile economy, poor investment, all of the above. What are the top challenges facing partners in Australia today, Sonia?
I feel like that description of the market could be at any stage in the recent years. But I think one of the common themes that I really see that affects all partners and their ability to take advantage of this situation is client experience and the heightened expectations that clients have of us. Customers coming out of COVID expect more. They expect speed of response, they expect greater value, they expect faster return on investment. And so it's really about juggling the demands of our clients and delivering a superior outcome.
Now, Sonia, you mentioned on the experience side, and I'll get into that around, those new expectations, especially since COVID, as you mentioned. But, there's almost a sense of irony that partners are very good at selling bleeding edge solutions. You would know that better than anyone being at a distributor. They can sell them, they can implement them, they can consult and advise on it. But when it comes to their own house, it's not always in order. Are you seeing that play out in the ecosystem?
Yeah, it's that old adage of a painter's house is never painted, right? I think in some instances, yes, but I talk to a lot of different partners, and what I find is there's probably three key attributes that where the partners who have essentially got their house in order are the ones that are stepping back and not only considering what they're selling and the solutions that they are providing, but how they're engaging and what they're doing.
Talk to me about experience. So you mentioned it in the opening, Sonia, just around, some of the challenges that end users are just placing more pressure on partners to heighten that level of experience. The CX element is more important than ever. How is that actually impacting the ecosystem? Because maybe if this was a conversation 5-10 years ago, that always wasn't on the table as a importance or as a priority.
Absolutely. I think, maybe 5-10 years ago, the technical attributes and what you could deliver as a solution provider was absolutely at the forefront of the decision-making process. But, post-COVID, I think what we saw a lot of the B2C experience roll into the B2B organisation and businesses. So now clients, when you're talking to them, they're looking for not only the best possible solution, but it's how they experience their engagement with you and your team. It's about how you get to value faster for them and how really they show up and their brand is positively impacted by engaging with you. So it almost in some ways you could see it as a bit of a double-edged sword, because if you can get the experience piece right, you can actually differentiate yourself better from your competitors.
And actually, that's a very good point, because when we talk about differentiation, we always talk about it from a solution standpoint, industry skills, obviously both very important, of course. But this part never comes in, the transactional, the engagement, which is an area that every partner can improve on, regardless of whether they're large, medium, small focused. I imagine that could almost level the playing field for the channel.
Absolutely. And I do think COVID was the big driver of this, in that it reminded us that as humans, we are humans, even though we work in organisations and we have a specific job to do. We want to engage in a certain way. We want to be heard in a different manner. And so, really, it's not just about the fact of, yes, you've ticked every box on this requirement that I've got, but you've actually done it in a way that it aligns to myself, how I like to work, how I want my culture and my organisation to be. And by really thinking about that experience piece allows you to be, I guess, more tailored, but in a way that is also scalable.
Now, Sonia, you're right in the middle of this, and before we get to the kind of the solution statement, while we're talking about the problem now, do you think the penny has dropped for partners on this experience element? Because you're essentially trying to create B2C experience standards in B2B. Have the partners acknowledged this, or is it still really early days?
I think I think partners have acknowledged this because I'm
Mm.
starting to see some. I love talking to partners because I always learn so many cool
Yeah.
things. But I'm starting to see different way people engage with their clients, and because they've changed up how they're looking to engage, how they would like to engage with us differs as well. And it can be things as much as they don't want to ring us to get a quote; they want that to be passed through their system because that's plugged into how they engage with their clients. I think the more we think about data as this commodity that is flowing through the distribution network, the more we'll start to understand the opportunities we have to really differentiate that experience.
I know we've spoke about this before on the data side, Sonia, just the level of insights and knowledge that partners will have within their own install base, with customers they've serviced for years. So there's that element of removing the manual processes, simplifying the complexity, but actually improving their own knowledge and insights around how they can sell better and sell more, I presume.
Oh, absolutely. And I would always say that partners know their clients the best. They are in their day in, day out, they're intimate with the expectations that those clients have. But what we find sometimes, and I'm as guilty of this as anybody else, is you make assumptions because it's the way it's always been, and
Mm.
sometimes you can miss subtle nuances or changes in how people are engaging or what they're transacting or that level of intimacy that you have. And so, one thing I really like about data is you can't really argue with it. So it's a great litmus test, if you like, that you have adapted and evolved with your clients, and you are continuing to drive different outcomes. The great thing is if the data does say what you think it should, well, perfect. You know your customers perfectly. We know our partners perfectly. But the market opportunity is there when you get an insight that maybe you hadn't considered before because, maybe some blinkers were on, and, that's okay. That's why we're human.
And that's actually a very good point. This is a market that's been run on instinct, ran on relationships, all important. Again, not going away. But if you can just sharpen that sword with a little bit more insight and data, I think that's probably the advantage.
Absolutely. And I think it's that whole adage of there is a point at which you can't work harder, you have to work smarter.
Yeah.
And that's really about how do you get those insights that are going to delight your customers? How are you going to get those insights that are going to save your team time, make it more enjoyable for them to come to work? Because as you know, your brand is experienced through the people in your team. And if they're enjoying and being fulfilled, then so are your clients.
So, Sonia, if I'm a partner listening or watching this, the obvious question now is, okay, we get that. That we agree. There are problems. What do we do about it? Where is a solution? How do we begin to tackle some of this? What's your answer to that part of the question?
Well, I think what I would say is I'd say start small. I think what we've found, well, certainly I've found as I've looked at what we've been doing over the last couple of years at Ingram, is really about stepping back and looking at the processes and looking at how we operate and where our data is and where it needs to go. And sort of saying to myself, is this the best possible experience that I've given to my partners or my clients? Are my associates having the best possible experience in how they are going about their day to day? And really challenge yourself on that, because I found, or maybe it's just me, was that a lot of the time the response you've got when you ask, is this the best way to do it? Oh, that's the way we've always done it.
Mm.
And in some instances, that's really valid. But in other instances, that opens up an opportunity for tiny little tweaks that can have a huge impact.
And just getting partners in that headspace where you have countless conversations with partners every day. They want revenue growth, they want to expand their business, all of the obvious things, but they never really seem to spend enough time in the business to actually make those changes. So Are you saying that's starting to happen now, even if it's in small segments?
It is starting to happen, but I think how we're seeing it happen is partners, like all organizations, are noticing those minor, small little tweaks that you can make and evolve that experience. They have an impact on operating costs, they have an impact on efficiency. They give you opportunities to not only retain the business that you have, but also gives you new market opportunities to go after. So I'd never suggest anybody does everything all at once because you'll end up in a hot mess. But I think just looking at those one or two areas, it's one of those things that becomes sustainable because you can achieve it, but then it has a material business impact for you.
Yeah, and that low hanging fruit, and there's a lot of that in partner organizations that they could get started with. So, Sonia, you're right in the middle of this experience conversation in the ecosystem currently. You're dealing with the partners. You're obviously in the distribution side, which is at the center of everything in terms of deals. What are you doing as a distributor at Ingram to help partners identify some of these issues, overcome them, get on that journey, albeit no matter how small or how slow that is?
So I think the way I explain it is we're evolving what we've been doing for a long time. So we've always really been focused on how do we help our partners do more, sell more, grow more.
Yeah,
And really, when we start to break that down, do more can really be about that basic transactional piece. How do I get quotes more efficiently, orders processed? How do I know where my orders are up to when they're going to arrive on site so I have the right engineers there? So really taking those types of basic requirements that can
yeah,
consume a lot of time and digitizing those. Equally, when you start to look at things like sell more and grow more, it's that point about how do we give partners access to some of the data that we hold about their transactions with their end customers because of what they've been transacting with us for many years. What are the patterns they can see? And looking at that information, how could that maybe change up what, one or two small things that they do to deliver different value?
and that leads us perfectly into the Xvantage and what Ingram's been building out in market. Before you actually maybe highlight what that is and what some of the benefits are for partners, Sonia, just back to those points. They sound simple, but I suppose that's easy for me to say, speaking to you on a podcast. But obviously they're not. The partners haven't done this for many years, but now they're starting to see that path forward. But what you explained seems obvious, but obviously isn't.
I think it's like a lot of the things that we learn throughout our careers.
Mm.
When you step back and look at them, they are quite obvious, but then to implement them can be quite
Is the
difficult.
exactly, yeah.
Because part of it is about thinking differently. Part of it is about change management and really ensuring that if you're changing, say, for example, how your team work, that you've taken them on that journey so they don't feel a jarring experience. Because again, going back to your clients will experience your brand through your people. And it's also trying to avoid that compulsion to do everything all at once. Those small little wins really start to add up. And I think that's, if we can really focus on that, that's where we get the results that we want to see.
And everything you've said so far, really, Sonia, the beauty is in that simplicity, that pragmatic and realistic approach to this. So it leads us perfectly to Xvantage. Talk to us about that platform and what you've been building at Ingram.
So Ingram as a distributor is really there to stand behind our partners and to support their success. And so the Xvantage platform is really about enabling our partners to be able to go about their day-to-day transactional operations with Ingram or some of their business growth strategy with Ingram in one single place. And even though it is a platform, that doesn't necessarily mean that the partners need to log on to the platform. The great thing about and the beauty about how the platform has been built is it also allows for integrations. So if a partner wants to work with Ingram, but within their own tool set or within their own environment, that is as
Ah,
applicable than, say, a partner who would like to just use Xvantage as that platform for them to run the day-to-day operational piece they need to.
and that's in the uniqueness of what you've created in those nuances, because you're right. There's so many different ways partners go to market. Every business environment is different. I imagine having that flexibility from your side is incredibly important to make sure as many players within the ecosystem can benefit from this.
Absolutely. It would be absolutely remiss of us to assume that all partners want to operate in the same manner and to give
Yeah.
partners access to the same sorts of functions and features. So we've really built Xvantage in a way that it is modular, so partners can pick and choose the elements that are right for them or for different people within their organisation to access or utilise to drive that business value. You may not want everybody having access to quoting, and that's absolutely fine, or invoicing, but you may want everybody to have access to business insights so they can sell more. So it really comes down to that one-on-one engagement with our partners to understand what it is that they are looking for to complement how they run their business.
And how would you? We touched on it earlier in the challenges of the market. It doesn't matter whether you're large, medium, or small size as a partner in terms of headcount or revenue, whatever it may be. Is that the same rules apply here for Xvantage? It doesn't necessarily matter if you're at the top end of town, if you're in the SMB space. Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter because at the end of the day, the processes may differ how you do it, but you
Yeah.
still need to quote. You still need to order. You still need to know where your products are up to. You still need to see your invoices and be able to capture data so you can bill your clients. Those core functions are still, everybody has to do them, but how everybody does them is different based on their preference, their size, and all of, every other combination you could think of. And so that's why the tool, that's why the platform is set up in a way that allows partners to be able to pick and choose the right way to engage on those particular functions.
And getting started for a partner in Australia is as simple as.
If you are an Ingram partner, you already have a login. If you can't find your
Very
login,
simple.
that's absolutely okay. Get in contact with your Ingram associates. So, and what I would really encourage you to do is to sit down with them and talk about what your business strategy is for the next year, 3 months, 6 months, whatever the right horizon for you is, and talk about those things where you want to make changes or improve. You might have a growth strategy, you may have a retention strategy, you may need to take cost or time out. Have that conversation and let's figure out the different modules within the platform that can assist you to achieve that.
And Sonia, I know it's still very early days in this part of the world in terms of the rollout, but it's been rolled out in other parts of the world for Ingram as well. What has been some of the early feedback, interactions? Because I think the real benefit is when the partners get to use it and they start to roll out and maximize it, to your point before. Everyone has different priorities. Is there anything that you've picked up so far in those early engagements?
The key thing that I've heard is about the ease of use and the customization that it allows, the ability that it tailors to your business. I think the other thing I'd say that's become across is that it's really helped people to step back and think differently about maybe how they might manage different parts of their organisation. Do they need to spend a bit more time looking at their subscription renewals, or is there a attach that they could do with some of their sales now that they've got those insights? So it's, early days, but so far positive feedback.
And if you were to, everyone in the market, as I mentioned, is hungry for growth, and that's never going to stop. How does Xvantage fit in and dovetail into that strategy for a partner? What would be your final message to the channel on that?
I would say data is absolute gold. And the great thing that I love about Xvantage, and the bit that I'm most excited about, is the business insight section. It takes the transactional data that you have transacted with Ingram over many, many years. It puts it together, it infuses it with AI, and it gives you a view of your business to look at. It's just looking at it from a different angle, and that's where the opportunities for growth can come from. Growth that you get from upsell or cross-sell, growth that you can get from repeatable solutions into different industries or similar industries. It just really challenges your thought process and gives you new ideas to consider.
Great. Well, Sonia, I appreciate you taking us through one of the most important parts of a partner ecosystem currently: growth, revenue, profitability, all of the things that matter to partners. So thank you very much for taking us through that today, Sonia. Before we let you go, we'll stop talking shop and we'll move into you as an individual. We ask this to all of our guests. Final question: as a leader and as a human being, how would you like to be viewed? How do you want to be viewed?
Oh, so just a very light-hearted question then.
I thought we'd finish with an easy one, Sonia.
Thank you. I think for me, it's really to be seen as the mixed bag of bones that I am. I'm passionate. I'm very headstrong. I'm always willing to take a risk for the right opportunities, but I'm also fiercely loyal and a little bit eccentric.
I think that's an excellent way to finish. Thank you very much, Sonia. Really appreciate your time today.
Great speaking to you.
If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to leave a review. And to check out more episodes, visit the website. Thank you for tuning in to B2B Tech Talk.